Hello and welcome to Business Journey with Atlas, advisors that listen and serve. On Business Journey, we cover the how-tos of starting a business and growing a business, as well as the plenty of missteps that you can run into and how to avoid them. For the show, our guest is my dear friend and client, Sheryl Mazisko. She is the CEO and founder of Ideal Harvest, and she is taking this business journey with us throughout the life cycle of her business. Welcome to the show, Sheryl.
Thank you for having me.
Can I impose on you, just to start very quickly, for those who are new to the show, What does Ideal Harvest do?
So we work in the cannabis industry, and we provide all of the services and equipment that are needed to outfit and operate a business. So from end-to-end services, from the time you apply for your license to product out the door. And we also have a patented proprietary piece of equipment called the True Vertical Grow System that literally flips what they call in this industry the canopy on its side, allowing you to get substantially more output and definitely reduce your operational costs because of the efficiencies it provides.
Excellent. Well, really thrilled that we're here, and we're talking about a fantastic subject today. One of the, on average, largest expenses for all businesses, it's HR. And with us is Diane Windemuller. She is the senior HR business partner and principal, and myself with Melodie Reagan with Eye2Eye Workforce. Thanks for joining us today, Diane.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to jump in. We're going to talk about HR. HR is really important, and people tend to think about HR just in terms of compliance. It's so much more than compliance. It is about everything throughout the life cycle of your worker. It also comes down to culture. Culture is really important. And one of the things, you can't be one thing on the inside and something else on the outside. Your culture matters. It affects your brand, right? So. But what we're going to do is we're going to start with, I just kind of like an off the cuff. Do you need HR when you're starting a business? You know, is it something that you should consider? And do you have HR?
Absolutely. I think it's something you have to consider right off the bat. Even as a startup, every person that we interact with, even if it's on a partnership level, I consider HR. Because you still have to set that right tone for your culture, make sure that the partners that you work with are sort of aligned with you in that aspect, because they then become the face also, or another face of your company. So it was very important to us that we looked at every relationship that we had as an opportunity for human resources and doing everything we could to engage people in that way on a cultural level, but also on a compliance level. And it's just, I feel like it really helps you to organize and operate your business better. One of the things we did struggle with early on was the job descriptions, responsibilities, things like that. So it creeps in every little nook and cranny of your business. So I definitely think it's very important. And we're kind of unique too, because not only are we, we have our own HR issues from within the company, but as you guys know, since we work together, we are also really, through our partnership with you guys and others, are putting those into place for the new organizations that we work with when we build out facilities. So we're looking at it from two aspects: our own internal culture and HR, and also those of our clients. So.
And by the way, we are on this show, we're going to cover a couple things that affect the life cycle of a worker, because it really is important. And you're spot on. You know, when we first start our businesses, we tend to think about just getting our product services running and how we sell them. But it takes people, it takes partnerships, that's HR. It doesn't mean that you have to have an HR person. One of the things that Sheryl has always been really smart about, Sheryl figures out what she needs to hire, and then she also brings in partners like us to help with functions that she knows. I don't need a full HR department. I don't need somebody on staff. It's not the way. I want to get the most out of my money. And we come prepared with some basics. So we're going to jump in on some of the things that you've done in starting up your business.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool. So Sheryl, can you talk to us about staffing needs and how you determine what is needed and when? What's that journey been like for you?
Well, we have, our model is, I guess I would describe it as based on pods. So when we execute a project, we have to sort of have a pod of people that can execute that, from the salesperson, who would be the original engager with the client, but also project managers and designers and grow consultants, and then also someone within each of those areas that we need to execute for our clients. But with regards to staffing, we base those pods, or when we bring on a group of people, based on the number of projects that we are executing at any given time and what our revenue is, right? So, as a startup, we have certainly lived through the ups and downs of being very excited about the perfect candidate and hiring them, and then, being in a lull and not having the money to pay, right? So we have been operating in years past on a very slim skeleton. Now that we are more up and running and we're doing more projects, we're starting to look at that. So we do have to balance, as a business owner, I have to balance the needs of how to best execute our projects, because that's what HR is. It's the ability to properly, in my mind, the ability to properly execute your projects and deliver on what you've promised your customers. If you don't have the right people in place, and if they don't know what they're doing and they're not well trained, I think that's one of the business owners' main and so you have to think of HR not as sort of an afterthought, but as your business. It is just as important as what you are selling. Who is selling it and how they're selling it, and how they're engaging with your customers is what brings people back or not. So I think it's definitely important. So back to your question, yes, certainly we have, initially we had to bring on the right leaders within the organization that sort of aligned with what I wanted the company to look like and what I wanted it to be, that culture. And then we need to continue to bring on people. And it's an interesting mix in this industry, because you have to have a basic knowledge, but then you also have to have the knowledge of all the other industries, like HR and project management and everything else. So that's how we staff, is when we need them, we bring them on. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
But by the way, that's the way most businesses staff. One of the things that Sheryl and I have had discussions about is there's a component of your business with everything that runs at a steady state. And that's your baseline, but then you have to have the ability to do this. And one of the trends that we see, you hire your baseline, and then what you do is you use contractors to give you the burst or give you that specialized talent that you need, or you get partners, as Sheryl says. So we're in a partner situation that for some of the services that we provide Sheryl with her business. The other thing about it is I always tell executives, you and I have had this conversation, that your job is OD. You are chronically having to evaluate the resources of your business and what you need, and you're chronically looking at your staffing. It's not something you do one time a year. It's something you have to do constantly, because you're also looking for ways to make things more efficient and as the job. And I give you a lot of credit, Sheryl, as you have worked diligently to get a balance between the two of those. And it's like in that journey, be careful about how you hire, because if you hire somebody and you really don't have a full-time job, that's a problem. It wreaks havoc. It creates a burden on you from a business standpoint for the investment, right?
Yeah, and I think one thing I will say in hearing you say that is agility. We hear this term all the time as business people. You must be agile. You must be. But I think people think of agility more as the ability to shift your product lines, and it's not. It is also your marketing. It is also your HR. Being agile and being able to address what is needed in the moment and let go of those things that aren't is crucial to success of your business. And I think that's the way business is done for most businesses these days. So.
What I love, something else that you just said, Sheryl, a lot of people don't think about their staffing, including their partners. You started a business. You have people who've come in and become partners. I'm going to do a little flag here. I've watched a ton of businesses that when they bring on partners, they bring them on for the wrong reasons. In that maybe you're afraid to go it alone. Anytime you bring a partner, that partner must add value. So when I think about your leadership team and value, how did you make some of the decisions you made with your partners?
Well, I think first and foremost is that culture.
Mm-hmm.
Do they treat their clients and customers the way we feel like ours should be treated? Do they have the same values? Is customer feedback important to them? All the little things that make it just like a friendship easier to deal with people, we look at when we look at partners. We also try to get very creative with our partnership network. So partners aren't always, for us, partners can be, somebody that you actually market together. You go out and you actually try to get sales together. That's a partnership. Sometimes it's a partnership that is actually executing something that we don't have in-house and would not have the ability, because our scopes change on every project. We, like you said, it's almost like rather than a true contract worker, we bring on a partnership.
Yeah.
And I think that enough companies don't call on people that they may see as competitors or somebody out there fighting for the view of the customer. And I don't think business is done that way successfully anymore. You really need to join with people, kind of gone are the days of like corporate secrecy and you can't tell anybody what you're doing, you can't give away your secret sauce. There's just too many people out there, and it substantially increases your ability to be successful if you have partners out there who are also talking your company up, just like you're talking their company up. But it has to be the right fit. It has to be someone who aligns with what you feel is right in the business, what your ethics are, all of those little things. It's important to look at.
When you're looking at a partnership or a contractor, do you go through some sort of formal process when you're vetting or screening for your partnerships?
Yeah, we treat partnerships as if they're employees. So the same onboarding process, the same cultural exposure and conversations, we do that with everybody. I'd like to do more of it. I'd like to be better at it. It's always a work in progress, but I don't think that we would do anything different with a partner than we would do with our own employee bringing them on. They need to know the history of the company. They need to understand who we are, what we do, and what we believe in order to be a good partner. So
I have another one for you with regard to your staffing, leadership team. How have you figured out your leadership team, and how did you go about hiring them?
Well, I would say that what roles or the type of individuals I brought on to augment the leadership team were people that had the talents or strengths that I did not have. So I tried to really do a little soul searching and say, what are you good at? What are you not good at? And be able to relinquish control enough to bring people on who had talents in those areas. Because, it's not about, for me at least, it's not about that I have to be the one-man show of everything. I've learned the business is more successful when you kind of bring a diverse team on that each can do their own thing. And once you're kind of a smooth operating machine, it takes such a burden off of business owners to know that they have someone that can, step in at any time and do just as good a job. I think I'm a firm believer in sort of that new HR mode of you're the best CEO or leader within a company when you're making everybody else around you look better. Because that's really, you cannot be in every transaction in your business. So you have to make sure that the leaders that you bring on can kind of, diffuse your message out there, both within your company and within the marketplace. So that's what I looked for. And so I started with what am I, I'm great at business development and getting partnerships and things going, but, really honing down in on the details of a deal and getting it all sewn up, not my strength. So that was one of the first things I did, is try to bring on somebody who could do that. And I think it's also important to recognize talent from within and try to build up. So I look for a lot of the people that I have right now as my future leaders, and what can I do now to help them grow and be ready to step in a position. So.
I have a little bit of a follow-up question. You said that you know yourself and you've done some soul searching. Have you ever given consideration to doing any formal assessment work for yourself or for those that you're bringing on board?
Oh,
for
tons.
testing?
Yes. Yes.
To see if there's that match.
Yes,
I
we've
love
done
it.
several
Yes.
actually. We started out with in my previous company that I worked with, as a leader in that company, we utilized something called culture indexing. So really
okay.
looking at,
Yeah.
where do you have the right person on the right on the right seat
the
of the
right
bus?
seat on the bus.
Yes, and is that person happy in that role? What actually, I think a lot of people. When I went into business for the first time, who I thought I was is absolutely not who I am. I mean, I really have changed during my years in business, and I think that's because people, did look at what I really was strong in and building those strengths up. So now we've kind of moved more into like the strength finders assessments and things like that. And again, I think it's important that you have a diverse team. I don't want a team of everybody who thinks like me, who acts like me, who does what I do, right? So I think you have to use those types of tools
Right.
to find those weaknesses or holes that you have in your organization and bring those people in, because everybody has a valuable contribution that they can make, and I don't think we often listen to all of those that in our organization that we should be. So
Well, that is part of your culture, as being a strength-based culture. So one of the things that we haven't said that Sheryl actually did, when Sheryl started her business, obviously she acquired a business, so she brought together a bunch of pieces to start it. So with that acquisition, she made a choice to bring some of the people in with the acquired business. The other thing that Sheryl did is she looked at where her business is going, what she is providing, who she's providing it to, and she created an org chart. And she looked at it and said, how do I fill this in, both with the people I have and what do I need to go out and get? And one of the things that I think is an opportunity for business owners with regard to that, you need to periodically, it's HR and looking at your organizational needs, it's not a once a year thing. You need to periodically look at what you need. And the other thing that you need to do is don't just extrapolate. Sometimes what you have to do is go to a future state, say what you want to be, and work backwards. Because otherwise, what can happen is you can add people to the wrong places for where you're trying to actually go. So that, along those lines, now one of the other things is you started off, and being in a startup, you did titles. Titles matter based on the role in the company, how that fits with your culture, along with what it means in the marketplace. But you know what, coming along and figuring out pay and compensation, benefits and all that good stuff, what was your journey there?
Oh, that's the hardest challenge, I think. One thing I will say is our industry probably overpays. So I think it's sort of normalizing. But if you can imagine, when this industry was born, there were a lot of people that had a lot of crucial knowledge that have over time become, as the industry has grown, there's more and more people coming to the forefront that have that knowledge. And so I think now you're starting to see some compensation sort of level out. But I also think that it's important to pay for expertise and to really honor the knowledge and experience that people have built up. So it's always a struggle to kind of balance all of that with the needs of a business. How much money do you actually have, and how much can you pay people? And I think what we've tried to do, especially as a startup or at least as a young company, is find creative ways to help compensate rather than just straight out money. Is it some time off? Is it I'm not that I'm against it, but I'm not sure how effective things like meals and paying for things like that are.
Right.
I think you need to go to your workforce and see what it is they need as a support for whatever position they're in. And I think being a little bit more creative, less stuck in this is your role, this is your responsibility, this is what you get, and anybody that comes in gets the same thing. Exactly. I think maybe is not the best way, especially in a small to mid-sized business. You just can't afford to always do that. So I look for ways to be creative with compensation. And I think the other thing is, for those out there who are in startup mode, the whole idea of what is the overall compensation with regards to ownership in the company and everything was a big challenge for us. So people may not think of that as an HR issue, but it actually very much is. Because what you opt to give people and how much they are involved in your company can really affect their day-to-day business and the way they act within your business.
Exactly.
So I think one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was this whole concept of manage up. Don't just think that, you can go to somebody during a review and, tell them everything they're doing wrong. You really have to look at how the organization is working together and listening to feedback from your people and trying to do what you can and being very transparent and honest with them about what's possible or not.
So by the way, along those lines, and I really do love what you have brought up, to have an effective culture and an effective company, it really is down to the individual. You have to manage to the individual if you want inspired workers. Mm-hmm. However, there are laws that govern what you can and cannot do with regard to compensation, how you can adjust some of the benefits. So Diane, what are some of the things that people should consider when it comes to that?
Well, I think it's important to, like you mentioned, Sheryl, build good job descriptions so that you understand the level of positions that you're hiring for and whether or not they meet an exempt type of criteria for the business or a non-exempt.
What does that mean? Everybody talks exempt, non-exempt. What does that mean?
That means that you have a certain level of responsibilities and decision-making capabilities within the organization, whether it be administratively or executive or professional level. So it has to meet a certain level of criterion based on the government standards. And once you have established that it is an executive level, kind of exempt level position, you want to make sure that you are abiding by the laws as far as providing a salary for that position. It would not be, you would not be obligated to pay overtime for that type of position. However, there are also the hourly non-exempt positions as well, and if you meet the criteria for that type of role, you want to pay accordingly and do appropriate benchmarking. But the main point I want to make is that you want to effectively outline your job descriptions and effectively position them within the market and whether they fall into one kind of category or the other category. So those are the comments I have to make on that.
By the way, what's important about that, and just to share with everybody, a job description is not a legal document, believe it or not. It doesn't exist legally. However, it becomes a guideline, and it will be used if you ever get audited by the Department of Labor, which can happen. One of the things with exempt, what Diane just brought up, your exempt workers can put in overtime. If they're getting a salary, their position is defined, then you do not have to pay them overtime. If somebody is hourly, however, there are rules around overtime, and it's beyond just the 40 hours. And you have to pay attention if you have a remote workforce, if you're allowing them to work at home. If I have an hourly worker, that part of the policy that they're putting time in while they're at the office, and then they go home and they work at night, let's say they get back on the computer 9 to 10, that does count as work time. So these are little things that you definitely want to have HR help you with as you are setting up, because there's so many complexities that you're dealing with, and these fall within the compliance area. The other one is, with your partners, you have taken a path of W-2 and 1099. Mm-hmm. So you have contractors, and then you have those that are on payroll, hourly, so exempt and non-exempt. So let's talk about for a moment, for the ones that you have that are W-2, how did you go about figuring out what you were going to do with regard to benefits, with handling payroll and things like that?
Well, I'd say it's a two-step process for us. First step being, what is our culture? So it was important to me, and I could not do it in the early days, but it's very important to me that we offer health benefits and all of those sorts of things. So the first was, what is our culture and what are we promising to our employees and how are we engaging them? And I think it's important to take care of people that are working for you. Second, I really pretty much handed over how to actually execute that, because there are so many little things. How do you train someone? How do you do reviews? How do you, what creates that right culture where people want to be engaged and participate and really feel like They are almost owners within the company. I want the people that are employed with Ideal Harvest to feel like they are just as important as the CEO or anybody else in the company, and that they can do, they're our face or our feet on the ground to everybody we deal with. And it's not just your customers, it's your vendors, it's your suppliers. All of that stems from how do you treat your employees, and what opportunities are you giving your employees to grow. So part 2, I hand it over to you guys to help me make sure that my culture was getting executed in the HR processes and procedures that we had in place.
By the way, Sheryl, one of the things I really love about you as a CEO is you think about culture. And one of the things that to tell everybody, if you don't think culture doesn't happen, it does. The question is, do you want to guide it? And we're going to come back to that, because Sheryl actually took a very focused process for determining what her culture wants to be and how she wants to set up. Specific to payroll, one of the things in offering benefits, we explored a variety of things. So we are the outsourced HR function for Ideal Harvest. Part of what we explored is, do we go and get someone to take care of payroll and take care of benefits, like a PEO, etc. And there are PEOs that say that they offer HR services, but they don't necessarily, depending, you got to look at it, do they provide the actual support that you need, or do you need somebody who's in there? Now, given where Sheryl first started, we actually made a choice just on a cost-benefit basis. We brought, because of the number of people, we started with in-house. And one of the things that when you're dealing with PEOs or payroll service providers, frankly, many of them, it's like, unless you have 20 employees, they're not going to put the time and energy into it. So it's like getting that bookkeeper, having a bookkeeper that will take care of just getting your baseline payroll. And then, of course, we validate to make sure everything is correct, because you got all of these regular tax filings that you have to make, that it's actually quite the process. Now, you made a choice where you want to provide benefits, but here's the thing about it is, legally, you've all heard of FMLA. So Diane, would you tell us about what is FMLA, and when am I legally responsible to provide benefits and do all of these wonderful things?
So the FMLA is the Family and Medical Leave Act, and it pertains to employers that have 50 employees or more. And it is providing job protected leave for up to 12 weeks. And so if you are under 50 employees, you aren't under the obligation of the Family Medical Leave Act. But it is also nice if there is an employer that's smaller, if they want to adhere to or just utilize the FMLA as a benchmark for themselves. It's certainly nice to have that available to people, and it's certainly a nice way to retain folks as well. But you're not obligated, unless you hit that 50 employee mark, to provide that leave, which can be in one lump sum if needed, or it can be something that's intermittent leave for a variety of reasons. It can be for your own serious illness, it can be for the serious condition of your child or another relative, a military family member, could be someone that you need the leave for. So there are a variety of ways to be eligible for Family Medical Leave Act. But again, it's the 50 employee mark that you have to watch.
Yeah, and by the way, it's at a cultural norm. I can share with you, most small businesses do not. Most small businesses are not in a place that they can provide benefits. If they do have leave, they typically do standard vacation. That's kind of the norm. One of the other ones, just so you know, with FMLA at 50 employees, and with FMLA, time off for maternity leave is the same whether it's male or female in the family. What I can tell you is only 14% of businesses, even today, provide paternity leave. There are very few that do it. And we're going to go to handbook for a moment, because it's an awful lot. You're trying to start a business, you're in your growth mode, you're trying to hit that curve. You've got to pay salaries, you got to get appropriate tools. You have so many things that you're investing in, flying to meet with clients, taking clients out to dinner, whatever the case may be. There are just so many expenses that come at you. A couple of things though that are required that you do need to pay attention to. When you have employees on payroll, you do have to pay workers' comp. So you want to get workers' comp insurance. On top of your workers' comp insurance, what I am going to say to you is, you want to consider any, depending on the type of business that you're in, you want to consider general liability, just so you're protecting yourself and your business as well from an insurance perspective. If you have services, consider professional liability. One other thing that I definitely want to ask, as far as we did the payroll, one comment. Now, we're going to be hiring. What's one of the first things that we should get in place? Actually, beyond a job description is
A handbook.
That's right. What's in a handbook, Diane?
It basically outlines the, the policies and procedures from an HR perspective, how you want to run your company from an HR perspective. It reflects your culture and how you want to handle your employees, and it's a good tool to use to outline how you function from an HR perspective, as far as PTO and FMLA, if you need that.
I
Your
kind of
policies.
consider it a safety net, because you
Yeah,
always know where you need
exactly.
to go to find the information.
Exactly,
Yeah.
your vacation time, your flex time,
What are
ways
normal
to,
office hours?
right, exactly, dress code.
All the things you think are obvious in your business that aren't.
Exactly. Communicating electronically through the company system, and what the company can and can't have access to. Just how employees go about conducting themselves at work.
Policies on social media. It runs the gamut. One thing I'm going to tell you about your employee handbook is be careful that you don't just pull it off a website. You really need to have someone who is an expert at least look at it. We pull all kinds of things down, but just make sure that you're compliant, because part of having employees, the laws vary by federal versus state. Now, we're going to have to do a second HR show, because there's so much. This is like the lifeblood of your business. But given what we've discussed so far, what would you say is like a little misstep or something you tell people to keep their eye on the ball about?
I think what a very wise woman told me once, which is that, again, if you're not intentionally putting a culture in, it is being created each and every day that you're at the office. So I think start with that, and then get help to understand how to actually enact that. Again, like you said, I think that in the early days we kind of skipped over some steps, and they always come back in the end, because if people don't have that framework, and that's what HR is, it's the framework of how you're operating your business. And if people don't know that, it's harder to go back and correct something once you've headed down the wrong path. It's much more disruptive to do that than to have taken the time and do it right in the first place. So I would go back and correct all those things I kind of brushed over in an effort to get out there quickly and make the business happen. So.
You know what? One of the things that I would end with saying here is have grace with yourself. There's so much when you are starting and running a business. Doesn't mean that you don't need to pay attention to it. We try to get as much right as we possibly can. But you also need to sleep, so don't forget that.
Sleep? What sleep?
Well, I want to say, Sheryl, thank you so much for being here today. We are going to have another HR conversation.
Happy to, would love to.
Fantastic. And then Diane, one of the things that you and I have talked about for people to get online is we have a checklist for you for HR. HR is an all year long thing. So you can go online and download that checklist. So it'll tell you all the critical things that you need to get done for a year, so you're not running with a blank piece of paper. Thank you so much for being with us today on Business Journey. So that you know, we air the fourth Wednesday of every month at noon. If you miss a show, don't worry about it. You can catch us on Facebook. Just go to facebook.com/ and it's Atlas Business Journey. You can find us online at atlascpas.com, and that is with an S, / business journey. So please visit us online, and we'll look forward to seeing you next month. Until then, have a great one.